everyone, Kelly here. And last year in 2020, I had started a series on my channel where I was doing try a chapter videos where I was trying the chapter of books that I was considering unhauling or getting rid of. So I was looking through my shelf, pulling off ones that I'm not sure I'm interested in anymore, giving them a try, and then deciding, do I get rid of them or do I go ahead and finish them? And I was planning on doing a whole series and, like reviewing the books that I decided to keep and all that stuff. And I had done 3 of these videos, like 2 try a chapter videos and 1 review video. And then the holidays came, my seasonal depression kicked in and all that stuff. And so I kind of stopped the series for several months. Like I think the last one was back in October, maybe, or September. So it's been a while, but I really do want to hop on doing this again because I have since then found even more books on my shelf that I just thinking about getting rid of just because, maybe I got them because they were at a discount or somebody gave them to me and I'm just not sure if I'm interested, and I don't want them just sitting on my shelf for years if I don't really want to read them. Or I might find some gems that once I start reading them, I realize, oh, I really want to read this and it'll be a new favorite. And since it's middle grade March, I thought, why not do one with middle grade books? I was looking at my shelf that I have of middle grade books or early chapter books, stuff that I'm collecting for my kids, and I just saw some books that people had given me or that maybe I got at library sales or things like that I'm just not sure if I want to read them to my kids. I've heard maybe some bad reviews about them or that they didn't stand up over time, or maybe I just don't know anything about them and I'm just trying to decide, are these things I would want to read to my kids? Are these middle grade books that I would like to read? Because I also like to read middle grade fiction as well. So I picked out 5 that I want to try in this video and see if I'm going to keep them and finish them and pass them on to my kids. So let's go through the 5 books. I'm not going to go necessarily into their synopsis now. I'll talk about what they're about when I actually read the first chapter, because some of them I didn't reread the synopsis, but I will tell you why they're on this potential chopping block. So the first one is Judy, Moody, and I was actually given an entire box set of the first 9 books in the Judy Moody series, and I did not read these as a child. I don't know when these came out. I'm sure they came out probably after my childhood, which would be why I didn't read them as a kid. Let's see, they came out in early 2000s, so they weren't out when I was a kid. And these are early chapter books. These are at the age where I could start reading them to my 6-year-old now. But I was looking online to kind of see, is this a good one to start reading with my kindergartner? And I saw a lot of parents saying that they wouldn't read this to their kids because Judy Moody uses a lot of words like dumb and stupid to talk about other kids, and it's pretty disrespectful of her teachers. And that's not really something I want to read to my kids. Just even though that happens, I don't really want to encourage it to, read them books with that example. They're going to see enough of that in school. I don't need to bring it into the house too in our literature. So I just wanted to try it and see if those are valid critiques and reviews that I have seen. And the next one is Harriet the Spy by Louise Fitzhugh. And this is a classic. I think it came out in the 70s from what I have heard. 60s. So it's been around for a while. I've heard of this. I think I read it as a kid, but I have heard people reading it recently for middle grade March the last couple years that thought it was a bit boring and that it didn't really hold up over time. So I wanted to give it a try and see if it's something that my daughter would actually enjoy. It's maybe a little over her age group right now, but it's definitely not full middle grade. So I think it's something, if it turns out to be interesting, that she could read with me in a year or 2. So I want to try it now to see if it's something we want to keep or not. I also have another book by this author, and it might even be in the same series. So I just want to check if this is something I want to keep. Because, just because something is a classic does not mean I still want my kid reading it nowadays, because there's plenty of new fiction out there and not everything really holds up over time. And then the next one is one I got at a library sale, and that is Ralph S. Mouse by Beverly Cleary. And the reason this one is on the potential chopping block is that I have tried to read with my daughter 2 Beverly Cleary books. We tried to read Beezus and Ramona and Socks. I finished both those books and did not like them, but my daughter did not finish reading them because she got a third of the way in and she got really bored, and I also was feeling uncomfortable continuing to read it to her anyway, so I let her say, oh yeah, this is boring, I don't want to read it. And then I finished it just to kind of see what I was feeling. But both of those books had siblings that were very mean to each other And like I said with the Judy Moody, I know that's real life and the kids are mean to each other, but I don't necessarily want to be encouraging that. And yeah, both of those books did not like work for me in order to like pass on to my kids. And so I just want to check if it's going to continue in that vein in this book. And then the next one is another one I got at a library sale. And this is this is more of a middle grade book. And I just haven't picked it up in like the 3 years that I've owned it. So I want to check if it's something I would want to read. And this is Uprising by Margaret Peterson Haddix. And this is a historical fiction about, I believe it's about a fire in like a clothing factory. And it talks about unions and child labor and things like that. And it sounded interesting when I picked it up. But like I said, I think I've owned it like 3 years and I haven't read it. So I'm hoping this try chapter will like convince me that I want to read this, or maybe I'm not interested in it. And the last one is another one that was gifted to me. And this one is another upper middle grade. So this is not one that I'm going to be reading to my kids right now, but if I like it, I would keep on the shelf. And this is The Whispering Road by Livy Michael. And before this was gifted to me, I had never heard of this book before. After reading the description, it sounds like it's a historical fiction with some more serious topics. So I'm interested in giving it a try, but since I've never heard of it before, I've never heard anybody review it on BookTube, I just want to like give it a try to see if it's something I'm actually enjoying. And I think that the ratings on this show mixed reviews. So yes, I just want to see if it's something that I would enjoy as a adult middle grade reader and something I would want to keep on my shelf for my kids. So yeah, those are the 5 books that I want to try and see if they're going to stay on my children's shelf. So I will update you when I have read one of them. Okay, so the first one I started with was Judy Moody Was in a Mood, which was the first book in this 9-book set. And I said I would say the descriptions when I read the chapter. So this is about a girl, Judy, who I believe she's in 3rd grade, and this is about her first day of 3rd grade, and she's kind of approaching that day with a bad mood. She knows it's not going to be like last year. It's going to be a new teacher. It's going to be a new class pet, new chair, and she's afraid she's going to be sat next to some kid she doesn't like and stuff like that. So she starts off the book in a really bad mood. And I get why people in the comments, some parents did not like this book, and because she does have a really bad attitude in like the first third of this book. So what I ended up doing was I read the first 2 chapters, and because it's so like short, I kind of skimmed the rest of the book just to see. I wanted to see where the arc was going, because if she stayed that way the entire book, then I wouldn't want to pass this on. But I wanted to see if there would be some growth process, because we all get in bad moods sometimes. So I wanted to see if that was actually addressed in this. And it was. So I will be keeping this one on my shelf. So basically, the beginning, there is a lot of stuff where she's mean to her brother. She's mean to her best friend. She's disrespectful to her teacher on the first day and all this stuff. But as the book goes on, some of those things are addressed. And then especially at the end, I mean, I don't know if I should say spoilers, because how many people are going to read this chapter book, but just so you know, in case you're a parent as well, that by the end, there's like a thing where her brother does something that ruins something of hers, and her brother thinks that she's going to get really mad and be mean to him, but she kind of just immediately, you know, switches her attitude about it, be like, oh, we can fix it, we can make it all better. And her dad even acknowledges, oh, I think it's great that you're changing your attitude and making something that's bad into something good. And so I think that the arc in this is what should be focused on, not necessarily the bad mood at the beginning. Okay, so I finished the first chapter of the next book, and that's Harriet the Spy. And this one is about a girl named Harriet that likes to write down things that she sees in her neighborhood or at school, things that she observes the people around her. And I, only read the beginning and then kind of skimmed through parts of the book, but it sounds like at some point she loses her notebook and it gets in the wrong hands. And so people are upset about the things that she writes about them. So I only really read the first chapter of this and then kind of skimmed some parts throughout it. And I would have to say in the first chapter, I was just so bored. Like, it just did not pull me in at all. Yeah, I just didn't really enjoy reading the first chapter at all. It didn't make me want to continue the book or anything. But what makes me really not want to keep this book on my shelves for my kids isn't just the fact that it was boring, but that in that first chapter, which I don't know how many pages is that first chapter, it was pretty average. It was 20 pages. And I would, like, no joke, she calls someone fat or describes them as fat a minimum of 10 times in 20 pages. And yeah, it just, they're like, just in one chapter, she's just, you know, talking about their fat legs and their fat hands and their ham hands, and, you know, saying somebody would feel horrible about themselves if they looked in the mirror and stuff like that. So I was just like, I just don't think this is aged well. I don't really want to have it on my shelves. I'm not going to read it to my kids because I didn't find it interesting at all, and I just don't really want that content on my shelf. Okay, so I read the next chapter. So I read the first chapter of Ralph S. Mouse, and when I started getting into it, I realized it seemed like they were recapping the characters. So I was like, oh, I bet this is not the first in the series, and I went and looked it up, and this is actually the third and last in the trilogy. But that's fine. I still read the first chapter because usually in these kind of like children's books, they just kind of tell you a lot of the stuff in the first chapter. And so that's basically what the first chapter was. It was reintroducing the characters that are in the other books. So Ralph is a little talking mouse. He lives in this inn. He's friends with this boy, Ryan, and Ralph just really likes riding motorcycles. So basically the first chapter is just introducing them and him riding his motorcycle, and a bunch of his little mouse relatives being jealous and wanting their own motorcycle. And then from kind of flipping through the rest of the story, I didn't like really skim, I just kind of flipped through and checked things out throughout. It looks like Ralph is going to go to school with Ryan for the first time and see what it's like being at school. So this seemed cute. It didn't have a lot of the problems, at least in the first chapters, that I had seen in other Beverly Cleary books, mostly because I think he's a mouse and not really like focused on the kids. But I'm assuming that maybe later in the story there might be some of that. But since this is the third book, I want to go back and like read the first book at some point and see how that one is before I buy it for my kids. The problem is that I had bought some of the Beverly Cleary books and then, like I said, didn't like them. My daughter thought they were boring, and so I had to ended up getting rid of them. So I'm not going to go out and buy Mouse and the Motorcycle. I'm going to borrow it from the library first, probably just the ebook, and read it through really quick and just see. And since it did seem like it would be cute and more appropriate than some of the other ones, I'll probably end up buying it, but I do want to try it first. This copy is so kind of beat up. I think I only got it for like 20 cents that I'm probably going to get rid of this copy, especially since it's the third in the series. If I try it out and like it, I'll just buy the whole series in paperback. All right, so I have read the beginning of the next book. This is Uprising by Margaret Peterson Haddix. This is a historical fiction that takes place in 1911 about, I believe, what was a true event, which was a fire in a factory in New York City, and a bunch of people, I believe, died and things like that. But I think this book kind of follows 3 young women at the factory, and it follows the time before the fire, because I think maybe the fire is only a small part of this, but it is about like the conditions at the factory and unions and going on strike and things like that, and really focuses on the women that were at these factories. A lot of them were immigrants. So like I started off reading the prologue, which was just a couple pages long, and that was really interesting. It takes place in the future, so I think like 20 years after the fire or 15 years after the fire, and this girl, or young woman, comes to another woman and says, "Tell me about the fire. I was only a young child." So I don't know what her relationship with the fire is, if her like parents were involved in it or whatever. And it sounds like the older woman that she's coming to is one of the narrators of this book. There's 3 narrators, 3 young women that work at the factory, and from the prologue you don't know who is the one that we're following in the future. So I think that is kept a secret because maybe some of them die in the fire and things like that, so we don't know who is going to make it out. And we're following 3 women, and so I ended up reading 2 more chapters. So I read a couple pages of the prologue and then the first 2 chapters because there's 3 perspectives, so I wanted to at least get 2 of the perspectives, because sometimes you might not like following a certain person, but then you like the other character. And that was kind of what was going on. In the first chapter, we're following a young woman named Bella, who has just arrived in New York from Italy, and her brother gets her a job at this factory. And I just didn't really like her perspective because, I don't know, her personality, and then her cousins who got, I think, did I say that it was her cousin who got her the job? So their interactions, stuff like that, I just didn't really like, so I was considering not continuing the book, but then I'm like, let me read one more perspective. So then I read from another perspective. What is her name? Yetta, and she is from Russia, so she has recently also just immigrated, and her sister had come to America a few years previously, so she is now living with her sister and gets a job at this factory. I think both of them work at the factory, and so I liked her chapter better, so it makes me feel like I want to continue the book, because even though I don't like one of the perspectives, you know, that might grow on me later, but then I have somebody I can root for because I liked this other girl's perspective, and then I did not continue to the third chapter to the next girl's perspective because I thought 2 was enough. So I enjoyed this enough that I do want to keep going. I'm interested to hear more about this time period and the, like, you know, factory conditions that were going on and the unions and strikes and all that stuff that was very common in this time period, because people did not have good conditions in these factories, and a lot of the people were immigrants. They didn't have a lot of choices, and so I think this is a interesting topic to read about and an important topic. So I did like it so far. Like I said, even though I didn't like that one perspective, I think it might grow on me as I go, and it could have just been because it's the very first time we're introduced to her and her kind of first glimpses of what's going on around her. So I would like to continue this on. All right, so done with the last book. So I read the first chapter of The Whispering Road. It was not very long. It was only probably about 9 pages. And I didn't read the synopsis before I read the first chapter, so I couldn't remember why it was that I had this kind of like on the chopping block, what I wasn't excited about this book. But the first chapter made it very clear of why I was hesitant about this book. We're following a boy named Joe and his sister Annie, and they, at the very beginning, Joe walks in and Annie has been like beaten to the point of unconsciousness by their mistress, and then they get thrown into the chicken coop for the night. And in this chapter we find out that they are new to this family, like they're servants and working for this family, and they came from like a boarding house, so obviously they're orphans who were at like a workhouse and then sold to this family, and they're treating them really horribly, and they've decided to leave. And yeah, this whole first chapter is just them basically like being treated horribly, and I remember that from the synopsis, that the synopsis makes it seem like it's one of those books where it's just gonna be like these kids just having a horrible time, like being treated badly for the whole book until they get some kind of, like, I'm assuming at the end they find a safe place. But I'm not really interested in reading that. Like that first chapter, I was like, no, I don't. And so I looked up some reviews, and the reviews say that this is a really sad and dark and grim book. And I'm just not interested in that. I get that it's probably accurate to life from what I saw from one of the reviews. It sounds like the author is basing this off of some events that really happened, and I think it takes place in like the 1800s, and that there were kids who were orphans and, you know, sold into servitude and like treated really horribly. But I'm just not really like interested in reading it. This is not a short book. Yes, I'm sure it's probably an important topic and really happened, but I have like no desire to read like 300 pages of these kids being beaten and hurt and, you know, all the bad things that could happen to them in the 1800s when you are poor and orphaned. So yeah, not gonna keep this book. So a family member had given this to me. She didn't give any explanation, so I don't know if she had read it, enjoyed it or anything, but even just from that first chapter, I'm like, I don't think I'm going to enjoy this book. So this one I am getting rid of. And then to review, I'm also getting rid of Harriet the Spy and the sequel. I read a little bit of the Harriet the Spy, and I just think these have not aged well, and I just don't really want them in my house to encourage my kids to read. I am getting rid of this copy of Ralph S. Mouse, but I'm going to try out the first book in this series. I think it's called The Mouse and the Motorcycle, to see if it's something that I want to read to my kids. But this is like a 20-cent copy from the library, and it's pretty beat up, and I probably shouldn't have even bought it from the library sale, especially now that I know it's the third book in the series. So I'm going to get rid of that one. And then I am keeping Uprising, and I'm going to try to read this soon. and like read a little more and see if for sure that I'm interested in it. But at this point, I want to keep it and give it more of a try, and probably will read this all as my enjoyment, because it's definitely an older middle grade book. Like even online I saw some people saying this was YA, some people were saying it's middle grade, so it's definitely not one like that my kids will be reading anytime soon, but will be more for me to read, and I think I will enjoy it. I'm just gonna give it some more time. And then I'm also keeping the Judy Moody collection for my daughter when she gets old enough to read these. So I think that was pretty successful. I'm getting rid of several books that I'm not interested in anymore, and then have one that, this one I just hadn't had any urge to pick it up in the 3 years I've owned it, and now I have a little more interest in actually picking this up and reading it. So I think that's a success. So that's it for me this time with this Try a Chapter Unhaul edition. I will probably be doing another one in a couple weeks with more adult books, because I have like a stack of about 20 to 25 books that I'm considering getting rid of. So I'll definitely be doing more of these Try a Chapter books. All of those are YA or adult books, so I'll definitely be doing more of that. This was all the middle grade books that I wanted to try, so the rest of them will all be older books. And yeah, I will see you next time. Bye.